Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and may the 4th be with you. I have a special treat for you all today. Well, technically it was yesterday, Star Wars Day, but didn't have time to finish this video. So I hope you enjoyed that special holiday. But today we have the nanoscale galactic senate on the capital city of all the galactic governments on the core world of Coruscant. So first, I want to apologize to all my followers for my silence in the last 2 months. Had a lot going on in life, all things good thankfully. Just finals, conferences, competitions to focus on. I also moved out, so I have a new setup now. So hopefully you guys will enjoy this. And it's a very weird time to be on YouTube, I'm not gonna lie. Especially with all the drama that's going on in the hip-hop community between Drake and Kendrick. But for the record, I'm on neither side of the story. But despite this, I have not stopped building, and I have 3 builds actually that I made during my absence, which are still coming, so fret not, fans of mine. I actually watched the Clone Wars when it originally aired as a kid on Cartoon Network, but I didn't really enjoy it, and I only started paying attention to Star Wars later on, and when I got introduced to sci-fi and architecture in general. And I think I mentioned this before, but it was all thanks to the book that I bought like in the middle school book fair called Star Wars The Force Awakens Visual Dictionary by Pablo Hidalgo, like all the way back in 2015. So damn, like, it's kind of crazy to think that next year will be a decade since the release of that movie, and man, my life has changed. But one thing I always wanted to do was start a YouTube channel, so here we are. Anyways, Star Wars these days and I have a very love-hate relationship going on. As most of the stories, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, have been abysmally unintellectual and unoriginal. There's only a handful of good content that has come out recently that I love, such as Rogue One, Andor, the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, obviously the Clone Wars, and the new Jedi games by Respawn Entertainment. Now, despite the lack of a good story, or any story, it has been a blast studying like the visual dictionaries and concept art books, as there's so much like good work and such artistic talent being put on display by artists at Lucasfilm and the other associated firms. Moving on, I was never quite a fan of domed architecture found on many classical Star Wars buildings, but I can't deny that they're unique and they're iconic to the series, such as the Lars homestead and Jabba's palace on Tatooine or Tipoca City on Camino. As for the Senate, since being a legislature is supposed to be the house or the voice of the people, it must appeal to the most common denominator amongst the populations as diverse as the galaxies, from the lowly moisture farmer to the trillionaire CEO of the most titanic companies. And the one thing all of those have in common is that their modern existence likely started in small huts made of rudimentary elements, hence the immediate recognizability of such a Senate building. That, and also the powerful statements that a dome implies. This is because domes are hard to create and support, so it shows that the structure supporting it must be strong or wealthy enough to host such a dome, and is also usually meant to be imposing or grandiose. After all, the dome on the Senate building is said to be 2 kilometers in diameter, is written in the Inside the Worlds of Star Wars Episode 1 book. Which means that unfortunately my nanoscaling doesn't work here, because I made it exactly to 1 kilometer wide on the scale of like 1 brick equals 150 feet. So I haven't really decided either to rework the building or create a new category of scale for Star Wars itself and other ridiculously huge buildings, since like in other media, like the absurdity also goes pretty hard, and like size-wise. The planet Coruscant is very much the opposite from Arrakis, which I described in my last video on the Arrakeen residency, as the Coruscant is an ecumenopolis, or a planet-wide city like sitting on its surface. Now, Coruscant was first founded a millennia ago by humans, it seems, although that is disputed if it is the original home of the humans in the Star Wars universe or no. And it is found in the galactic core region with the honorary coordinates of 000, despite not being in the geographic center of the galaxy. Now, this sector of the galactic spiral is dominated by other such planets with massive populations and industries that are the wealthiest by developmental indexes or by GDP. Typically, the farther you go out from the core, the less civilized and more Wild West the world's become. So Coruscant became insanely wealthy, being at the center of multiple major trade routes and hyperspace lanes, and slowly the entire surface was consumed by urbanization, which only left one major ocean uncovered on the surface and the tip of its highest mountain, Umate of the Manarai range, sorry for the pronunciation about that, peeking out of Monument Plaza, the central square. Finally, Coruscant has 4 moons, Centax 1, 2, 3, and Hesperidium, which all of these were kept as public parks with minimum development. Having fully geoengineered the planet, the local government controls the weather and temperature, which has allowed a population of around 3 to 4 trillion inhabitants, with the capital city planet hosting several rings in descending order from the opulent and well-lit city surface, which only gets worse and worse as you descend. So I also highly recommend watching Eckhart Slaughter's video and others on the Coruscant underworld to know more. Not quite escaping the trend, the current Senate building sits on the foundations of the already destroyed original Senate Hall. And it joins part of other districts around the capital, as it is in the federal district. But another major one that actually is seen in the prequels was the Works, where the large industrial factories remain. And as for the architecture of Coruscant, this is very much inspired by Art Deco, and most of the towers that jut kilometers into the sky are based off of New York's spectacular skyline. And when it comes to maintaining all this, you may ask, this is all taken care of by massive city block-sized robots, maintaining, cleaning, and building entire skyscrapers at once. And strings of flying cars, speeders, loading docks, and other cargo ships zip past these skyscraper canyons that make up city streets and down into the access shafts to the Coruscant underworld. And finally, in the atmosphere above, seas of gargantuan space stations process heavy cargo and billions of visitors per day, as well as provide the most robust defense network of shield and guns in the entire galaxy. Being a unicameral body, the Senate requires 3 senators per planet per sentient species to draft laws, pass decrees, create the federal galactic budget, etc. However, this has led to a forum of nearly 2,000 delegations of senators representing all of the following, but even other NGOs or corporates, as to make sure that every power broker gets an equal voice in the stage of politics and power. Now, this process is overseen by the Grand Vizier, the Vice Chair, and the Chancellor. However, in times of crisis, the system has proved to be ineffective, and especially part of what led to the Clone Wars was the fact that so much corporate influence had consolidated in the halls of the Senate that it made the average planner, average citizen feel really disenfranchised. So hope this doesn't have any real world implications. And then finally, the Senate was dissolved by Imperial decree by Emperor Palpatine right before the Battle of Yavin, only to be resurrected as a mobile structure that jumps from world to world by the New Republic after they won the Galactic Civil War, only to then get blown up in the Hosnian Prime cataclysm decades later by the First Order when they shot Starkiller Base right at the capital of the New Republic at the time. So, as of now, it is unclear what government will form after the events of The Rise of Skywalker, also known as Episode 9, but I hope it will remain cool and relevant, and also evolve to match the new state of galactic affairs or real-life governmental developments here on Earth. Outside of the actual lore of the building, the construction process was relatively straightforward, but it forced me to innovate as there was so many circular elements, and also how do I hold down both the top and bottom parts of the structure, right? The dome and then the shaft, right? So overall though, I'm still pretty satisfied with this build. However, I know that there's still a lot of work to be done, and I want to rework and make the structure stronger. And eventually I do want to make a whole Coruscant skyline, for example with the Naval Intelligence Headquarters, the ISB, or the Grand Jedi Temple. And as for the nearer future, I really want to release the 3 builds I made during March, because then I leave out of state in June. And some of you may know or figured out through my accent, but I'm actually half French, and for the rest of this summer, outside of those 3 builds, I'll be working immediately on all sorts of European architecture, but particularly like my favorite city on earth, Paris, as the Olympics are right around the corner, and you know they're hosted there in Paris this year. So this summer for me is looking pretty incredible. I just know it. So let the games arrive, and I'll see y'all soon.